Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the news that someone who actually organised and coordinated the riots and terror attacks last summer has finally been convicted and sentenced to 7.5 years in prison. I suppose the question now is, are the investigations still continuing? Can we expect to see people even higher up the structure charged? Or will the authorities decide that action was mostly about a deterrent and that's sort of done now? But first, for daily political commentary, please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out. So, taking a small diversion from the Elon Musk circus this week, only a small one, it'll be back, that thing keeps running. Although I suppose this is sort of related, it's sort of within his sphere, isn't it? But anyway, unless I've missed something, all I've really seen is convictions for people taking part in the riots and terror attacks and those who incited violence online. But the violence and destruction of property could not have taken place with these people alone. The reason people's walls were kicked in, mosques were attacked, hospitals had arson attacks, was because the number of modern day brown shirts taking part was too much for the police to easily contain. Those with the most responsibility are the ones who organised and coordinated the large groups of people to be at the same place at the same time with a target to attack. Andrew McIntyre was one such person. In fact, his conviction may have been a bit sooner, but the idiot decided to try and deny the charges to begin with, but he did later plead guilty. But let me read you out some of the evidence gathered by Hope Not Hate, who have been instrumental in helping the police over the riots. Quote, "We started the Southport and Liverpool riots. All it took was a Telegram and TikTok account." I mean, if you're going to deny the charges, it's probably best you didn't post a confession online. This is almost as stupid as those people who try to get out of charges when they filmed their own crime spree and posted it online. The Telegram account he referenced was reportedly set up immediately after news of the Southport attack coming out. So it's not like he already had it and he just purposed it for this. He set it up immediately after that. So he saw the opportunity, which suggests he'd been waiting for the opportunity. And again, this is something that had been apparent to me. It all happened so quickly that it was quite clear all of the preparation was taking place sometime before, and they were just waiting for a useful trigger. You know, he used his account to call out on what he called English lads to rise up. He posted maps of the mosques that were to be attacked with times and instructions for the people he organised. After the terror attack on Southport, he congratulated those who took part, then organised the attack on a mosque in Liverpool. In fact, he seemed to be instrumental in the creation of all of the major attacks which took place. So this is definitely one of the main organisers of the violence. Remember that those who decided to add to the anguish of an already battered Southport community by kicking the shit out of their houses and laying waste to their streets were mostly from out of town. They'd been summoned. The far-right instigators had tried to claim, oh, this is a spontaneous expression of frustration. This is the British public who are not happy with the government. No, it was not. It was all carefully coordinated. And just to be clear, when I describe what the media calls riots as terror attacks and riots, that's because both took place. A riot is just a large gathering of people intent on public disorder. And many of the people who took part in particularly the later events were just that. They thought it would be a laugh to get pissed up and blow off steam with a bit of casual destruction of people's and public property. But those taking part in the first couple at least, and those organising all of them, were attempting to use the violence in order to achieve political aims. That is the legal definition of a terror attack. And the fact that Nigel Farage, although he went a bit cagey when they started, still tried to leverage them for political aim means that Nigel Farage is responsible as well for effectively being part of a terrorist organisation. So although the majority who ultimately took part and found themselves in prison for it were rioters, the likes of McIntyre are terrorists. And my only regret with this conviction is that we're not talking about terror actions, right? I appreciate that prosecutors are just trying to make sure they get convictions, so they're going with charges which are the easiest to prove. But it annoys me that, you know, whenever an act of indiscriminate violence takes place, if there's even a hint, doesn't matter if it's America or Britain, if there's even a hint that the perpetrators aren't white, the media immediately start going, ooh, is this a terror attack? But if it's a load of white guys, it's like the thought never enters their mind. At most, it's a riot. That's it. No, if there's violence employed with the purpose of achieving political aims, it's terrorism. That is the literal definition. And it'll come as no surprise that McIntyre's also a Nazi. And I mean that literally. I know a lot of people will describe any right-wing dickhead as a Nazi when it's not true. I try to use words more precisely, and I mean what I say. During the terror attacks last summer, when I talked about literal Nazis organising them, I meant it. This guy was even found with a copy of Mein Kampf at his home when the police searched it. Now, on its own, that doesn't, of course, label you as a Nazi. You could just be researching. But with everything else which emerged about him, it is accurate to describe him as a neo-Nazi. He even has selfies of himself posing giving Nazi salutes. And despite the fact he was organising people to attack mosques because the violence last summer was fuelled largely by Islamophobia, he also used every opportunity on his Telegram account, as far as I can tell, to make clear his hatred of Jews as well. So anyone trying to claim that the attacks were in any way justified on any level, you were being coordinated by a literal Nazi. Let that sink in. But now here's my question. McIntyre was clearly more than just a grunt in this operation. He was very much part of the planning, the organisation and the coordination of the terrorism. But the far-right operation doesn't fall apart because of his imprisonment. There will have been more senior figures, more instrumental figures than him that haven't been charged. Can we expect in time to see more charges brought, and the reason for the delay is that those investigations are more complex and sensitive? Or are we facing a situation where the police are already stretched, thanks largely to 14 years of Tory abuse of public services, and the main objective of the exercise was to stop the attacks and make people think twice before taking part in a future one? Because remember, the reason for the fast-tracking courts last summer was to make it clear, yes, you can go to prison just for being part of a riot. If you just turn up and you're part of the crowd, you don't even have to lob a brick, you can go to prison. Like I said, a lot of the people taking part after the first couple were just pissed up morons. They thought it was like when they caused trouble outside the pub of a Friday night, maybe a telling off by the police, a fixed penalty notice at worst. They don't understand the difference. The difference on Friday night, the police can contain you. When you've got like 200 people, any one of whom might lob a brick at you, the police can't control that so easily. That is why even just being part of the mob makes you a danger, because they don't know who's going to lob a brick at them and who is not. You know, it's when they started to see people going to prison just for being filmed in attendance that they decided to stay at home, and the whole thing fizzled out. And because the prison sentences were as publicised as the attacks themselves, if the far right try to kick off again next year or the year after, they'll find themselves a little short on volunteers. And in a way, some of the Musk amplified disinformation maybe does no harm to this strategy either. You know, the far right are complaining that people have been in prison for posting memes on Twitter. No, they haven't. Every single person convicted for their online behaviour was calling for the murder of people by these racist mods. Every single one. In fact, there were some people who were posting stuff online that I would regard as inciting violence, where they weren't charged because the evidence wasn't deemed strong enough. So those who were charged and convicted were the most openly promoting murder. Also, it has to be borne in mind, the vast majority of them pleaded guilty as well, so they've admitted their own guilt. However, there's a sense in which you could argue that pretending people have gone to prison for posting memes might dissuade some people from posting anything supportive of far-right violence. You know, because you can imagine someone thinking, oh, is this post a bit beyond the pale? Well, if they think you'll get put in prison just for liking a post, then yeah, you're likely to err on the side of caution. So in a way, ironically, that would be a good thing. But my point is, the attacks are over, long over. It's difficult to imagine something similar happening in the next few years. Eventually, people will forget, you know, that you can go to prison just for being part of a riot, because, you know, last summer, they clearly forgot the same thing happened just about 12 years before. But the memory of the prison sentences should work for a few years, you would think. And so, is this going to be a case of the investigations winding down, job done? Or do the authorities have the resources to take a long-term view and decide that it would actually be a good idea to stop this happening in another 10 years' time as well, and the way to do that is to take the head off the serpent? I guess time will tell. But at least now I can say that the consequences have not just hit the knuckle draggers being corralled into brutality. At least one person who was instrumental in making it all happen has gone to prison. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe for further content. If you'd like to support the channel further, you can click the join button for memberships. Thanks for listening, and until next time, I'll see you later.